Welcome back. As I told you earlier today, we are delving into matters family inheritance, and we are privileged to be having two gentlemen. On my immediate left is Honorable Justice Aggrey Muchelule, and on my extreme left we have Reverend Njenga, Geoffrey.
That's correct.
Karibuni, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thank you, listeners.
We're going to tackle issues inheritance. And you bear me witness that this is something in most African countries, it's something that people really don't talk so much about. But first things first, Honorable Justice, you are the presiding judge of the family court at the Milimani High Court. Kindly maybe put up to speed, because many people don't know what issues that the family court tackles.
The family division is actually the largest division of the High Court. And we deal with matters succession. We also deal with marriages, divorce. We deal with matrimonial property, division of matrimonial property after parties have divorced. We deal with adoptions. We also deal with children matters. So that's the family division of the High Court, yes.
I understand there are over 6,000 cases as of 31st of December that were pending at the family division's court. I can say that's a huge number.
Yeah, that's how big the division is, but we've reduced it in the last 3-4 years, reduced them from 25,000 to now 5,800. It just tells you that Kenyans have problems. Problems that we are trying to solve through our division. Specifically, today we are talking about the succession, inheritance. Kenyans do not believe in writing wills, do not believe in sharing out their property to their loved ones when they are still alive. They will wait until they die, and there's no will. And that's how these matters come to us. So if they were writing wills or sharing out the property to their children and to their wives, we wouldn't be in this problem. But once we have disputes, we must manage them. We must realize that there is so much of Kenyan wealth that is in the files, in these succession files. Some of those files carry as huge as 10 billion or more in terms of the estate that has been left by deceased persons. And until the day that we have resolved these disputes, that wealth cannot go to the family that has been left, nor can it go to Kenyans, to the Kenyan economy. So we have decided that, yes, we are doing our bit, but we must educate Kenyans on, first of all, how to approach the court. Because if you are a Kenyan and you have rights under the Law of Succession Act or obligations, you cannot access these rights until you know what the rights are all about. So we are partnering with our donors, in this case, Keln, to be able to provide literature, simplified literature on how you can approach the court if you want to file a petition to succeed the estate that has been left by your mother or father. So this is the literature on the table. We have the entire week. We are launching it tomorrow to share this information with Nairobians, but eventually we'll release this literature to the rest of the country. Mr. Njenga comes in because, Reverend Njenga, sorry, comes in because as part of trying to resolve these disputes, we realize that litigation alone will not help us. And it will not give us the result that will leave Kenyans confident and without fighting. So we brought in mediation, and he's a mediator. We have court-annexed mediation. So as we litigate and hear and determine cases parallel, there's mediation
Yes.
that he'll be talking about in due course.
I'll come back to you on the issue of the wills and those people who haven't written a will when it comes to succession. Reverend Njenga, karibu tena.
Asante sana.
The Honorable Justice has talked about how you're partnering and you're a judiciary accredited mediator.
Yes.
How has the judiciary really helped in mediation of such family cases?
Well, I think one of the biggest questions that people keep asking is, so what is mediation? People confuse mediation with other things. But mediation is one of the best things that has happened in this country. We have a country where sometimes we don't talk a lot about the good things which happen. And in my view and estimation, mediation is one of the best things that have happened, especially in helping Kenyans access justice. Mediation is simply bringing people who are in dispute. You bring them together to negotiate a mutually beneficial outcome. And the family in particular need to be encouraged to go to mediation. The court is a complicated place, a judge will tell you. That's why they have booklets telling you how to approach the court, because it's complicated. And Kenyans are stuck in the judicial system. And the judiciary ought to be commended for encouraging mediation, because especially in family matters, people come to talk, and when people talk, they are able to discover areas of agreement. A family would be locked out of their estate, like he tried to explain, if they are in court. But if they come out and talk, it's possible for them to unlock their wealth and enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I've dealt with matters, by the way, mediation works, because I have dealt with matters that were locked up in courts for 17 years, for 20 years, for 25 years. And if those families are willing to sit down and talk, they are able to unlock their wealth and enjoy it.
Perhaps to add on that, how many cases in relation to those that are taken to court actually end up in mediation? Because you can bear me witnesses that there are a lot of Kenyans who do not know there is also another court process.
That is for sure. That is true. There are very many Kenyans who don't know, and that's why we are going out to tell them. Court-annexed mediation has been known for about 4 years, so it is work in progress. Kenyans are getting to know that indeed there is a beneficial process that can help them unlock their problems and their wealth. So it is not very well known, and I said I would commend the judiciary for pushing that out. I also train mediators. I'm involved in a group that trains mediators. So in training and in practice at the judiciary, Kenyans are getting to know. And we need to tell them that indeed there is a way that they can sit and talk. You see, a family matter cannot fully be determined at the court level, because, you know, the court process is a win-lose outcome. If the judge drops the gavel, is it bang the gavel, there's going to be a winner and a loser. In a family situation, where do they go?
That's true.
More often than not, when the judgment is given, that is the beginning of yet another spiral of problems. Because, you know, oftentimes I believe I didn't lose fairly. I may think that other things happened to cause me to lose, but not so in mediation. Because in mediation, you bring them to the table to talk. And they negotiate for their interests. In the litigation process, it's the right. The judge is obligated to give me my right. Whether that right destroys me or not, on the evidence and the law, he will give me the right. But in mediation, it is interest. And in the family setup, you want to understand what the interests are.
We'll come back to you because of even the cost. Maybe I'm quite sure a lot of Kenyans would want to know how the mediation process works, and maybe is it cheaper than the court?
Right.
I'll come back to you, Honorable Justice. You talked about will. Many Kenyans are not ready and willing to pick up will, maybe because of their tradition, taboo, or even their own beliefs. What is the core process in terms of people who have taken the will, and there are those who haven't taken the will, and in terms of succession?
But let me just say first that mediation is free to the parties.
Yes.
Okay? It is the judiciary that has undertaken to finance mediation, and it pays mediators some token, but the parties don't pay a cent. But you asked me the question about a will. A will, there is, under the law, the right of any person who is sane, who is an adult, who has property to will out, to write a will. And you can do an oral will, you can do a written will. A written will, you must identify the property that you want to will out, identify those that you would like to give this property to. It doesn't have to be crafted by a lawyer, it can be done by you. And because as long as you are alive, you can amend it as many times as possible. The only thing is that you have to sign and date it and get 2 witnesses who are also have capacity, who are adults of sane mind, who can witness the signature that you put on your will. It's as simple as that. And you lock it away. Upon death, it will come into play, it will be read, and that's how the court will distribute the property that you will have left to the people that you have designated.
Still on the same, we have witnessed cases where families are contesting and they're fighting for property in court, and there was a will that was there. And some cases have dragged on for years. We have others maybe 10, 20 years, 30.
Yes, I mean, there'll be many reasons why a will be contested. A party will be saying that the person who was making the will did not have a sane mind, or was being coerced by a widow or some member of the family into writing that will. Or they may be saying that, that it wasn't witnessed, it wasn't signed by the maker. You know, and the law allows for you to invalidate the will if those parameters have not been met. Yes. But then what we must remember is that it's only in very limited cases that we will invalidate a will, because as the law demands, we respect the wishes of the dead. If this is how he wanted to will out his property to whoever he wanted to will it, we have no business interfering with it. But we must check and find out that it is a proper will in accordance with the law.
Okay. Perhaps back to you, Reverend Njenga. So many times that we've heard about mediation. What are the successes perhaps you can talk about that we have achieved something, and what are the efforts that you yourself as the mediation team are taking so that many Kenyans can know there is another way other than the litigation way? We have the mediation that you don't need even to spend a single coin, as Justice has said.
First, I'm a crusader for mediation because I believe it works. And I talk about it just about anywhere I go, because I know Kenyans need to know that there is another way of resolving conflict. Now, the mediation process is voluntary. That's a little debatable for the court-annexed mediation because oftentimes the disputants are sent to a mediator. But in the ideal setup, mediation is voluntary. People choose to come. And that's why we need to educate Kenyans to know that there is an alternative to litigation, and it is voluntary. People can come. The other beautiful thing about mediation is self-determination. In litigation, the judge will make a determination of the case. But in mediation, people determine their own destiny, so to speak. They come to talk about their problem. You put power back to the disputants, and they are able to express themselves. And you've not experienced it, so you don't know this. But I can tell you, when people get the power back to talk about their problems, you empower them many times over, and they are able to talk and release emotions. We call it venting, and mediation deals with both issues and emotions. And the litigation process is really not very much interested in emotions. It's facts. It wants facts. And we know that in most cases, people are hurt more deeply. It is the emotions which are hurt more deeply. Somebody said something that has gone on for 20 years because somebody said. Now, in mediation, you allow them to express themselves freely. Now, the process is confidential. So I'm not likely to sit here and tell you that I did this matter and this is the outcome, this is what we went through, because it remains confidential. And that is very attractive because people know they can come to this process and their problem can be sorted out without publicity, which at times can be very negative. You said about successes. I have handled perhaps every day of my life. Now, I am dealing with a matter either in succession or in commercial, and in family matters, distribution of matrimonial property for those who have decided that they don't want to remain married anymore. And you know, in marital matters, the emotions are so high. And when you go through the divorce process, you basically destroy each other. But if you're able to get that through mediation process, it can be done in confidence, confidentially. And once people choose not to get married, really there are only two things they can talk about, the property and children. And oftentimes the battles in court is to try and take advantage so that then you can either get more property or you can keep the children. But if that's handled within a mediation process, you are able then to contain that overflow of emotions and help people to come to an amicable solution even when they have disagreed. And that's why we call, we say mediation is a win-win outcome. Kenyans need to know that indeed they can have win-win outcome.
Perhaps just to cut you a bit, what is the difference, Justice? What is the difference between this court mediation process as opposed to now going all the way to the judge? And secondly, you have 1 full week to talk about this issue. What are you anticipating that you're going to gain from this service week?
A number of things. One, the Constitution under Article 159 says, among other things, that we must encourage alternative dispute resolution. And one of them is mediation. So courts are commanded by the Constitution not just to hear and determine cases, but also to refer them to mediation. So this court-annexed mediation, cases begin in court. You must file your case in court. And then it is us who refer these cases to mediators. We have a number of mediators that are accredited by a committee in the Judiciary called MAC. It's called Mediation Accreditation Committee that checks on standards. So we have accredited many mediators. But that's aside. So this week, like I said, access to justice is important. We would like Kenyans to be aware of their rights under the Law of Succession Act. We want to empower them so that when they come to court, they know what to expect. First of all, they know how to approach the court, the amount of fees they will pay, and to who, and for what service. And the kind of information that we want in court at the time when they are filing their cases. You know, there are brokers, sometimes it will be our clerks, sometimes it will be just wananchi out there, who will take advantage of you because you are bereaved, and they'll tell you it's going to cost hundreds of thousands, to be able to file a case. And yet, to be able to process a succession case to completion, unless there's a dispute, and unless you have advocates then who will charge you lots of money, it's not more than 10,000 shillings. It doesn't matter how big the estate is. Okay? Yes. And you'll be done. So this is the information that we want to share with Kenyans. We began in English. We have a Kiswahili version. We have a Luo version. We are working on Kikuyu version, and eventually we do it in all the languages of Kenya.
Now that you've talked about languages, is this service week at the Milimani Law Courts alone or throughout the country?
because this is the biggest family division. We begin here, and this information is going to go to all our court stations, but eventually we will find a way of communicating with all our stations so that we standardize our services and standardize our operations. Yes.
And finally, we're talking about the mediation process that some Kenyans, let me use the word some Kenyans, do not know that it's there and it's so cost effective and also fosters how people talk about. Do you have plans perhaps to the mediation process itself only to make Kenyans aware of this process that is there?
As we speak today, there's a committee that is in Eldoret talking about mediation. We've launched it. So this week we're launching it in Eldoret, but we've launched it in Kisii, in Mombasa, in Garissa, in Kakamega, in Kisumu, in Nakuru. We are going to launch it across the country. So mediation is going to be part of our life. You know, people think that we like when we decide cases and we have winners and losers, okay? Justice is not just about that. We would like our customers, our clients, to go away feeling that in this process, I won something, even as my friend won another. So we are now interested in quality. We are interested in confidence building. We want a judiciary that works for you under the new constitution. So that's mediation is one of the way of achieving this objective.
And perhaps you're using any media platforms?
That's why we are here. But we are all over the media stations. We use newspapers, social media. We are communicating with Kenyans on this issue.
Reverend Njenga, I'm quite sure when you talk to people, they hear your reverend and talk about mediation. Perhaps they might mix it with the aspect of religion, or they just mediation. When it comes to mediation, it's mediation.
There is really nothing wrong in mixing it, because, you know, Christianity is really about mediation. Jesus Christ is the greatest mediator, talks about reconciliation. And mediation really is about reconciliation. However, there's a difference. These are skills that you obtain to be a mediator. You are trained, you acquire skills, and are able to conduct people or to conduct people through a mediation process. So it's not just for priests, it can also be for you, and you can be a mediator. In fact, you look like you can make a good one.
Thank you.
So you are trained, and then when you are trained, the judiciary accredits you for you to do matters in the judiciary. However, that is only part of the story, because you can do mediation outside of the judiciary, and I do. I am doing mediation outside of the judiciary in helping Kenyans in commercial matters, Kenyans in succession problems. Even before they go to court, they can come to a mediator, and that can be sorted out. So what I think the media ought to do, and you are in that, is to really create a lot of energy and a lot of interest in helping Kenyans, because let me tell you, Kenyans are languishing because the formal litigation process is very scaring for many of us. And also we have been made to believe it's unreachable, and in some ways it's unreachable. I was sitting in Kiambu Court not too long ago of a succession matter, and I watched all these old people sitting there, not having a clue what is going on, but they know they have to come to court. Mediation is different. It's beautiful because you sit with those people and discuss and help them appreciate the problems, and they find their solutions.
Perhaps back to you, Justice, something that really brings so many emotions, even on social media, the succession when it comes to women. It's something that really brought about a lot of
the Constitution,
debate.
Thanks to it, says, among other things, that children are children. It does not matter the sex. So that, and it doesn't matter whether they are married or not married if they are daughters, isn't it? They are entitled to succeed the same amount of wealth as their brothers. So that if you have 10 acres that you've left behind and you have 5 daughters and 5 sons, all things being equal, each one of them will get 1 acre, whether they are married or unmarried. So, and it's a difficult discussion. We surprise parties who come to court, traditional Kikuyu, traditional Luya, traditional Maasai family. You shock them when they say, when you tell them that the women are also going to inherit. They scream and say, but she's married, she's going to benefit on the other side. We tell them, you are also married. I mean, your wife is also going to bring wealth from the other side. But that's not the issue. The issue is that children are children. It's equality, there's equity in the distribution of wealth.
What are the challenges perhaps you're facing, and especially, I've seen at least, commend you for a good job, 23,000 cases to around 6,000. It's quite a milestone, I must say.
We still have many cases that, not just in Nairobi, but across the country. And, the Bible says that people perish for lack of knowledge.
Absolutely.
So if you do not know how to approach the court, what to do, you can perish. You can perish. Your wealth can go to waste, isn't it?
Yes, true.
People think that, yes, my husband has died, let me get my brothers-in-law or my sisters-in-law or my fathers-in-law to help me, and in the process, they con you out of your property. Okay? And yet, this property has been made by the deceased, for you, the widow, and your children. So we have decided that it's not just enough for us to sit in court and determine for people who do not understand what is going on. In fact, part of the reason why they then start thinking that we've been corrupted is really because of lack of knowledge. You see, for instance, a son in the family who comes and you are saying, where are your sisters? Bring them. And that you share this property equally to them, the only conclusion they reach is that the sisters have compromised you. They don't even know that the Constitution is what I am operating on. So we want this knowledge to go out to all Kenyans. The Constitution says that judicial authority belongs to the people of Kenya. And it is exercised by us as a delegated responsibility. And that's why we are partnering even with mediators. Okay? Because, and mediators are anyone. He's a reverend, you could be a policeman, you could be any other profession. Of course, there are lawyers who are mediators, but you don't have to be a lawyer to be a mediator. You see, one's trained. So we want justice closer to the people. People want to identify with non-lawyers, for instance, in the resolution of their disputes. Because sometimes, when I wear my wig, they think I'm up to some mischief, isn't it? But he goes there with his non-wig, and he's able to talk to them in a language that they understand very quickly, and we get these matters resolved.
Reverend Njenga, you must have experienced some challenges in your mediation.
Yes, one is there's very little knowledge out there about mediation, and that's why I want more and more crusaders. I want people to talk about it because people don't understand. And like the judge said, when people don't have knowledge, they perish. That's a big challenge. Again, mediation is relatively new. People do not quite understand how it works. And I said I would commend the judiciary for fronting it and pushing it. As a nation, we need to push it so that people can understand how it works. It is one of the ADRs, alternative dispute resolution mechanisms, and we need to help people understand it. So that's the biggest challenge. But when people get there, I can tell you, they get so because it gives people power back. When you take a matter to court, you surrender your power to the advocate. He is going to speak on your behalf. The little that is left is taken by the judge, because after he listens, then he will determine. But in mediation, the power goes back to the people to determine their own cases. So there is not enough information out there. People in our minds, the mindset is more litigation than mediation. That people tend to want to go to court because there is authority, there is power, and they still are struggling with that. I want to go to court because the judge has power to determine.
Yes.
So we need a lot of education. This week, it's important that people get to know you can do it, and indeed they can.
Yes.
I think I want to thank Kellen. This organization
Yes.
is the one that has, the judiciary hasn't spent a cent by way in the publication of this literature. We partner with agencies. On this occasion, we partnered with Kellen. They are responsible for the publication of all this material, and the event that has been put together at Milimani Commercial Court tomorrow, if you can come, it's been put together
Of course, I'll be
by,
there.
by them. So
Yes.
we want to thank them. But the other thing is,
Yes.
I think last thing, an investor seeking to invest his money in a developing country will, among other things, consider where it's going to take the shortest time possible to resolve that dispute. So if it is taking 6 years in Nairobi, and in Kampala it's taking 3 months, and in Kigali it's taking 1 month, a rational investor will go to Kigali.
Okay.
Yeah. So the
Thank
government needs to invest in mediation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, but we are pressed for time. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. In case you're joining us now, we were speaking to Honorable Justice Aggrey Muchelule, who is the presiding judge at the High Court Family Division. We were talking about matters family inheritance law. We also had Reverend Geoffrey Njenga, a judiciary accredited mediator dealing mostly on family cases. We will be back with more news. Don't go away.